President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump both secured enough delegates to become their party's presumptive nominees for president, setting up a rematch in November. The nominations will be made official at party conventions this summer. The 81-year-old president said on Tuesday evening that he was honored voters had backed his re-election bid in a moment when the threat Trump poses is greater than ever. Incumbency gave Mr. Biden a natural advantage and he faced no serious challengers for the Democratic nomination. Meanwhile, Mr. Trump remains very popular with the Republican voter base, which has propelled him to victory in primary after primary over well-funded rivals. His campaign for a second term in the White House has zeroed in on stricter immigration laws, including a pledge to seal the border and implement record-setting deportations. All right, Rufai, rewind 2020. We're seeing a rematch between these two, 8 years ago. That was 20, my maths is failing me now. But 2022.
Oh, you're correct.
I was correct. Oh, 2020. So rematch, yes, 2020. And we're back here again. It looks exciting. I would mention that if these two emerge, November will be a month to certainly remember in America and the world.
So, I mean, November has always been a month to remember in American history. I mean, depending on the candidates. Even when it was 2016, when it was Trump versus Hillary, that was a very heated race. Hillary won the popular vote. So Trump is about the American president in recent times that has not won the popular vote, but the electoral college vote, obviously we know the way American politics work, that you have electoral college vote and popular vote. So Hillary didn't win the popular vote, but she didn't win the electoral college vote, and obviously you've lost us if you don't win the electoral college vote. We knew they were going to pass it. I mean, I knew the race was, like I predicted, the race was going to be over by Super Tuesday. And after Super Tuesday, Nikki Haley had to just stop. I mean, because she couldn't go further. So, and that was why I was asking that day. I mean, why was she still saying she was in the race? Because it was a total shellacking. I mean, this is one of the worst margins ever. It's not even, it's a no contest as far as I'm concerned. Also, the Democratic Party, Trump, Joe Biden had that. But even before now, they knew they were already presumptive nominees. The truth is, it will be ratified at the convention where they have convention media. But they have started the onslaught. In recent times, Joe Biden saw he was lacking in the polls. So what did he do? He started bolstering. The State of Union address gave him a lot of oomph, prepped up his campaign. I think they're neck and neck in some polls now as we speak. Formerly, Trump was already bolting away in the polls. Secondly, he's launched a war arsenal because there are some key swing states that are going to be a fight to finish. Penn is going to be there and a couple of other states. And also, definitely, if you look at the voting pattern of America, most of the southern states would definitely vote Republican, the Southern Carolina of this world, and most of the states in the South. But in the more urban, cosmopolitan states, definitely they'll tilt towards a Democratic candidate in New York, for instance. So, and that's why in 2016 election, Trump lost in New York, despite, anyway, both of them were from New York anyway. Hillary Clinton was a Chappaqua senator in New York, and Trump too stayed in New York for a bit. But they tilted, towards Hillary Clinton then. So, but the battleground state will be states with, heavy electoral college votes, states like Penn and the likes. Joe Biden has been able to bring out a 30 million war chest for adverts online, television, radio, and the likes, to be able to feed to voters. And he's been playing on this age thing. I mean, he had an ad recently where he was saying, yes, I'll get the job done. It doesn't. I know I'm not a young man, accepting the fact that the age thing. But Trump is also downplaying the age thing because Joe Biden is just 4 years older than Trump. So Trump is an old man by American standards. I mean, the last oldest president we had in America was Ronald Reagan. And Reagan then was in his 60s and he was deemed as quite too old then. So this is the oldest ever. So both of them, and the key, points Trump normally campaigns on: build a wall, hard borders and the likes. And you saw that play out in the State of the Union address. Also, Joe Biden is kicking back on that and saying, okay, there's been a lot of economic growth in my time. Because the economy also dominates American politics largely. One of the reasons why Trump lost in 2016 was the fact that COVID had really, in 2020, it was the fact that COVID had really affected the economy and it was a very hard one to come back from. And so Joe Biden is trying to sell his economic prospect and anything. He's been on the road a lot. I think over the weekend he was in Georgia and all of that. But I think the fireworks will also continue. The super PACs too will also make a very big dent because those folks have a lot of money to buy, adverts and the likes to be able to tilt the race and all of that. Then definitely the Koch Foundation, the Koch brothers are bigger spenders in American politics. They will also, so it's also going to be a play of money and who can raise more money. And Joe Biden is doing well as regards raising money. The Trump campaign is not raising as much, but let's see how the race pans out. But For my analysis, I'm still tilting towards a Trump victory, but I might be wrong.
All right.
Okay. Looks like the campaign for the November 5 election in the presidential election in the United States has started effectively. Even if it will be in summer, that the two major political parties, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, would officially announce the nomination of the two persons who emerged yesterday. Yesterday, there were primaries in 4 states and 1 American territory. And at the end of the process, even by 1:03 a.m. Eastern Time, it was already very clear, and it had been clear, so clear, since Super Tuesday, that Joe Biden, incumbent president of the United States, is already the presumptive candidate of the Democratic Party, and that Donald Trump will be the presumptive candidate of the Democratic Party. Now, the American system is about primaries, getting delegates and all of that. And both parties are similar in terms of how they go about it. Where do we stand? As of this morning, within the Democratic Party, President Biden needs about 1,915 delegates to be able to be the presumptive nominee. He has over 2,000. Because in his own case, there was really no real challenger, because of the incumbency factor. All through the race, he won in all the states so far in the course of the primaries, except in American Samoa, where there was a draw. So that's his own record up to this point. And then, of course, President Trump, he won in all the states. As a Republican candidate, he needs about 1,215 to cross the threshold. He got up to about 1,958, far exceeding the threshold for nomination. Okay, he too won in all the states except in 2 places where he was beaten by Nikki Haley, and that's in Washington, D.C. and in Vermont. And I made the point before that in terms of number of delegates, if you add Vermont and you add Washington, D.C., you just get a little over 40-something. So look at that gap. Now, I said the campaign has started, and before the presidential televised debates, you have both candidates debating each other, whether they like it or not, in terms of responding to each other in the media. What do they represent? President Joe Biden will go back to his State of the Union address, in which paragraph by paragraph he was attacking President Trump. And he was saying that, look, Trump represents revenge, resentment, retribution, values that do not represent the ideals of the United States, and that the American people should worry about the future of democracy, American democracy. We are going to hear a lot more, in that direction. Another thing, he talked about his achievements with the economy. So in this campaign, the economy is going to be a big issue for, President Trump, President Biden. Inflation rate in the United States, 3.2 in February, we're told, but year-on-year, annual rate, according to the Fed, 2.4%. So he's going to make heavy weather out of all those things he talked about in his State of the Union address, how he has created jobs, how he has reinvented manufacturing in Belvedere, and his support for the auto union workers of the United States. He's promising a free tax code for the American people. He's talking about border, and he's saying he's not going to deport people or take people away from their families. He's talking about providing support for the upturning of, restoring Roe versus Wade, abortion, reproductive freedom, the right of the average American to choose. He will be campaigning on the basis of issues relating to freedom to vote, relating to workers' rights. These are some of the key pillars, of what President, Biden is going to be saying. The only problem he has is that he's 81 years old. Despite the fact that he has no challenger, people have been making issues out of the fact that he is 81. But as I said, he has gone through certain tests, and his doctors have said there's nothing wrong with him, even if, as an old man, he has occasional memory lapses. But in terms of age, Trump himself is 77 years old. Trump will be the second American president in 100 years to seek re-election, to return at a later date to say he wants to come back to office. So we have two candidates who are like both incumbent presidents, who have been there and they are coming back and all of that. But in terms of President Trump, what is he promising? We're going to hear a lot from him, and we're already hearing from him. He wants to close the borders. He's going to be very strong on migration. Trump says there will be a lot of deportations. All the people who have entered America is going to drive them away. He says he's going to support Ukraine. He's also going to support, well, ironically, also Russia. So, but Trump is a master of inconsistency and contradictions. And he's also saying that he will put America first in every circumstance. Putting America first for Donald Trump means isolationism. It means anti-globalism, whereas President Biden is at the other end of the spectrum. But common to both of them, of course, is American exceptionalism. However, that election is not likely to be determined on the basis of foreign policy, largely, except because this is a time when the world is facing strife. American exceptionalism will corner them because there may be no difference in terms of the competition with China. But there will be issues about the economy and also about affordable health care, Obamacare, which President Biden says that is committed to and is going to expand. So what we look forward to is a contest, characteristically, that will be governed by ideas, not emotionalism, not provincialism, not religion, the kind of nonsense that we are used to here in Nigeria. And I think that Nigerian politicians should watch that American electoral process in 2024 very closely to see maybe perhaps this time around we will even begin to learn some lessons about how a campaign should be run at the level of ideas rather than at the level of primordial, retrogressive sentiments.
Very true. Well, before we move on to our next story, just to mention that 8 months to elections in November, and President Joe Biden, even though he has the incumbency factor, his approval rating is one of the worst in recent democratic history in America, only second or third to President Donald Trump himself and George W. Bush. And they went on to lose their respective elections with low approval ratings. It's often been said that, yes, these are just polls, these are just ratings, it's not an actual factor in terms of what will happen during the election, but it is a clear and strong indication of what could potentially happen. And so President Joe Biden has his work cut out for him between now and November, especially during electioneering and campaign season. He had quite a push during the State of the Union address, especially in demonstrating to his electorate and voters that he was the man for the job, he was sound, and he was highlighting very clearly the achievements he had made in terms of the economy. And the economy alongside immigration are two factors that would play a key role in determining how Americans perhaps will vote in the next elections. Now, from President Joe Biden's stance, he has already proven by his actions in recent times that employment rate has been stable in the U.S. and the likes. But President Donald Trump is coming on the strength of the fact that he's going to be very hard when it comes to immigration. He's going to close the porous borders. He's going to be he's going to put America first in terms of foreign policy. And he's coming again with that narrative of America first, America great again. And so perhaps this might sway the voters. But it's important to know that while President Joe Biden has 40% in terms of approval rating, in terms of polls, most polls judge President Donald Trump at forefront or leading by up to 3 to 4 points against President Joe Biden. And it's quite unusual for a president who is currently sitting to face such a huge challenge, especially in terms of approval. In fact, a number of people have called this election a choice of two unfavorable options. It would be who would choose the lesser of the two evil in a number of people's opinions, or a number of people's perception of the next elections in the United States of America. So it's too early to call, even though it's quite close to election time, because both candidates are neck in, neck out in terms of winning the favor of the American people. Unfavorable at the moment. Unfortunately, President Joe Biden is not doing well in terms of his approval. Donald Trump in himself has to fight that, but let's see how this works out and how the people will vote based on ideas that would be postulated in the course of their electioneering in the next few months. Moving on to our next story. In the aftermath of that contentious session in the Senate, the leadership of the National Assembly met with President Bola Tinubu at the Aso Rock Villa. Federal lawmakers led by Senate President Godswill Akpabio met with the president in a closed-door meeting. The details of the meeting's purpose and outcomes were undisclosed. On Sunday, Bayo Ononuga, the Presidential Special Advisor on Information and Strategy, refuted allegations by the suspended Senator Ningi regarding the 2024 budget, dismissing claims of dual budget operations. All right, there is fire in the Senate. I mean, how do we run? But yes, Senator Ningi has been suspended for 3 months. The president has met with the Senate president and his deputy. Your take on what happened yesterday with our plenary?
Oh, blimey. Here we go again. I think, and Dr. Bati, you were talking about the need for Nigerian politicians to learn. And the question is, do they learn at all? I'll be very fast as I can. Number one, that suspension was a way to be able to shut Senator Ningi down, but he has a lot to say. I think he has a right to be able to bring whatever facts he has to the press. And the question is, what is the definition of padding? Padding means putting unnecessary things in something to make something longer. If that's the case, that budget was padded, and I tell you how. Putting projects like building churches and all sorts of projects, servicing traditional rulers in a federal budget, is padding. It's just to try to make it longer. Senator Ningi has a lot to say, but I think the presentation was a problem with Senator Ningi. Him going on the line of ethnic slant had lost me in the first place. Just like Senator Kwame Bamdele, which I felt was uncalled for, to say this was about Akpabio and it was about the North against the South. There is nothing like Akpabio there. The question was the budget padded or not. Budgets have always been padded in this country. It's not today. If you hear the analysis by Shimon Igwide yesterday, you will hear very copious notes about how this happens, because the National Assembly has the power of appropriation. So let's stop deceiving ourselves. And thanks to Senator Agbom Jaribe, now we know that some extra senators will give 500 million for constituency projects. The question is, let's investigate those projects. The ICPC brought out a report that most constituency projects were bereft of corruption the last time. What did we do to the people that were involved? What happened to them? Nothing. Didn't we see a constituency project that have somebody built a constituency project somewhere and started putting his name on all those projects? So it speaks volumes of the corruption that goes on. And if President Tinubu truly wants the sanctity of this country, they must call for an independent investigation. Try to suspend Senator Ningi, and it doesn't cut it. There are the rule books of the Senate that says, okay, there's a 14-day parameter for suspension. Okay, the Senate President can also suspend even longer than that. But we've also seen suspension quashed in courts. I think it was the Ali Ndume case, if my memory serves me right. So all of this Rigman rule, we need to be able to see what's in Ningi's hands. And that's why I've always called for an Office of the Budget Responsibility. If it can be attached to the initial budget office, where you can have a proper scrutiny of the budget itself, line by line item. Because we see all these things, that we know what is happening in the country, and it leaves much to be desired. And there's no how the Senate trying to exonerate itself for all of this. The Senate has a lot to answer. And Nigerians must want to see what Senator Ningi had in those papers he had there. Because there's a lot embedded there as regards repetition of contracts and projects and things like that. And there's a lot more that needs to be said. But I said Senator Ningi's fault is going the ethnic and religious part, initially in the BBC interview, and not sticking to the empirical facts of the matter. But in terms of padding, now today budget don't depart. They don't depart budget for Nigeria. Now today, there's no time to talk more.
Okay, what are the key takeaways from what transpired, the chaotic, Portuguese parliament-like situation that we had yesterday in the Nigerian Senate? It's as follows. This is not the first time that we will have issues with complaints about the budget. Since 1999, the budget has always been a problem. In 2016, under the Buhari administration, there were complaints by some ministers. We even said that what they proposed was not what the Senate, the National Assembly had put in their budget. I recall that at that time, the Minister of Health complained, the Minister of Information, Mr. Alhaji Lai Mohammed, also raised concerns at that time. In 2020, 2021, 2022, President Buhari consistently protested about distortions to the budget. So there has always been an issue with the budget of Nigeria, whether it's reference to constituency projects or what is approved at the end of the day. Number one takeaway is that we have to pay attention to the integrity of our budgets. Budgets every year must be subjected, after it's been passed, to the integrity test. Yesterday, President Tinubu, we were told, met with the leadership of the Senate. I think the president should go a step further and ask that this budget 2024 be subjected to an integrity test. That's number one. Number two, takeaway. Nigerians have just received a wake-up call that they have to pay very careful, close attention to the implementation of this 2024 federal budget. Because it's not only the allegation by Ningi that we're confronted with. Senator Jarigbe stood up and said some people collected 500 million. Did they collect cash? What is that 500 million meant for? And so Nigerians, this is the time for vigilance to monitor the implementation of the 2024 budget, just in case these allegations back and forth exist or do not exist. Uriwa has already said that Ningi is being persecuted. United Nigerians in diaspora are threatening that they will stage protests from Washington, D.C. to other U.S. capitals to other capitals in Europe just because of this incident. So it shows it's not just even the National Assembly that is being, exposed, in terms of integrity. Even the integrity of the entire government is being called to question. That's number two. The third takeaway is that the Senate yesterday succeeded in sanctioning Senator Ningi for what they considered an unparliamentary behavior. The chairman of the Appropriations Committee, Senator Solomon Adeola, was the one who called the motion for urgent national emergency, and he debunked everything that Senator Ningi said. And at the end of the day, Senator Jimoh Ibrahim called for a suspension for 1 year, but that was modified to 3 months, and the sergeant at arms walked him out of the premises of the Senate. What does this suspension mean? It means that he cannot go to that Senate, he cannot be seen near it, he cannot enjoy any privileges, he cannot contribute to any discussion. That must be of concern to the people of Bauchi Central who voted for him. What is the number 4 takeaway? What options are available to Senator Ningi? He was asked and advised to apologize. He refused. And that resulted in confusion on the floor of the Senate. But he has recourse to the law courts. Yeah. In the past, we had a case of Senator Ovie Omo Agege. That was in 2018. Senator Ovie Omo Agege in 2018 had raised issues about the plan of the Senate to reorder the election timetable, and he said this was something being done against the interests of President Buhari at the time. Now, it was Senator Dino Melaye who moved the motion against him, and he was suspended for 90 days. He went to court, a federal high court in Abuja, and the federal high court in Abuja ruled in his favor. The Senate went on appeal and filed a stay of execution, with the court. But he got back in May 2018. That did not work. So there is a precedence, even within the Senate, in that regard. So Senator Ningi refusing to apologize may have, been advised by his lawyers that he has that recourse. And then, of course, there's Akini Bido versus Ondo State House of Assembly, which is another case in that regard. The decision in Akinibido versus Ondo State House of Assembly was that the legislature can suspend a member only for a short period, maybe one day sitting, but not indefinitely. So these are legal issues that may come up. But whatever it is, whether there is a recourse to law or an apology, it's very embarrassing that Nigerians are confronted again with this issue of the budget. But I think that takeaway about subjecting the budget to an integrity test is very important. As for the other details about how the lawmakers run their affairs, they should know that Nigerians are watching and they are not particularly impressed.
Yes, absolutely. I think we all stand for an independent and forensic audit of the budget, especially since these claims or these allegations are very weighty allegations. And rather than, recount his words or perhaps step back, he is insisting on the fact that his claims and what he claimed is what he actually stands by. That's Senator Ningi. Now, according to the co-founder of Budget, Shonini Binde, he actually did mention that there's some items, line items, that could amount to about 3.7 trillion naira that seem vague and not granular enough in the budget. There are some things there that they just put just a line item and huge sums of money without a detailed breakdown as to where these monies will go. And you would appreciate the fact that these present an opportunity for hanky-panky, if I could use that word, or for it to be misappropriated. And so there's some line items. There's a goals budget for 1.88 trillion naira, no breakdown, TED fund, 700 billion naira. So perhaps the call now by Nigerians is, what are those things, those allocations going to? The details. You cannot just put a lump sum of money to a line item and say that that's what it's there for. This is what would raise the alarm around perhaps suggestions around budget padding. So rather than saying, oh, it's impugning our integrity, it is a disgrace, an embarrassment, as the Senate President has said, why doesn't the Senate prove itself? That's what Nigerians are asking. I mean, if you're saying that without any doubt that one should trust the Senate and the fact that the process was transparent and everything was under due process, then by evidence through an independent audit, let the people see. I don't think it's fair to shut down the voices of people who are saying that there are certain things that are happening that are not right, or where due process hasn't been followed, and we want to push this under, or it's a disgrace, an embarrassment, or why should you say such a thing? That's in the past. What we want now are results. And I hope that those are some of the things that the president discussed with the Senate president and the deputy Senate president when he had that closed-door meeting with them yesterday. This story or this issue is not by any means closed. I believe that it has just opened up a new, canker-worm of different issues that belabor, our country as it seems, and also the Senate. Very importantly, let's also probe that statement by Senator Ajaribe that some ranking senators collected 500 million naira. It is still an allegation. He hasn't given evidence or proof that this has happened, but we cannot keep quiet. Who are those ranking senators that got 500 million naira if indeed they got it? Even though Senator Jimo Ibrahim has come out to say he never received such an amount of money. He's one person, a few other people have said, no, they haven't come out. But let us investigate and probe those statements.
Just to clarify, Agbo Jaribe was on television and Rise News yesterday. He said it's for projects, for constituency projects.
That's
what the 500 million
projects or not.
was not
Senator Jimo Ibrahim said he didn't collect any money.
Some senators have accepted that they collected it. One senator, when he was speaking yesterday, he said he couldn't deny the fact that they collected that money, like Agbo Jaribe said.
Well, yesterday. Senator Jimo Ibrahim and a few others have said they were not aware of any constituency projects of 500 million naira given. But it will be important for us to understand this and then to see what those 500 million naira, what the constituency projects that the 500 million naira was allocated to, what has been done with that amount of money allocated for those who have admitted that they've collected. Well, we'll move on to other stories making the rounds this morning. The Ministry of Transportation has secured the sum of $1.3 billion for the completion of the Kano, Katsina, Jibiya, Maradi rail project. The federal government has asked Binance for information on its top 100 users in the country, including the transaction history for the past 6 months, as investigations into currency speculation allegations continue for the third week. The Purple Women Foundation, in partnership with the Women Advocate Research and Documentation Center, held a solidarity walk to show support for Chioma Okoli, who was arrested after posting a review of a tomato paste product on Facebook.